Dixon did too.
They're on. The light should be turning green. You want
It's green now, Charlie.
There we go.
Good
Perfect.
job.
Thank you.
push the mute button if you don't want to talk with your on.
Thank you.
I'm happy to talk.
When we come in?
Well, I took really good notes
I don't
for the first
Meeting take is supposed to happen.
6 minutes.
Okay. We're okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you missed my tirade. Thank goodness.
I got good notes.
I think you ought to repeat it.
Yeah. So I'll ask Jason. And for what it's worth, I'm a little put off by this whole thing too, and it's why I'm hoping that it is the Dreamland trying to make it more interesting than anticipated. So. But,
okay, well, may I suggest that paper that I gave you, or that is available, publicly, that there be copies of the 4 types of government that are
Sure.
available? Maybe 100 copies at that meeting for people to have reference. That will begin to educate them on what the alternatives might be as we come forward with a report. So I think the more that people know about it, the better.
I mean, I'm intrigued to see how much of the conversation on Thursday is directed that way.
And who's convening it?
Believe it's the select board doing it. Now I don't know if they have a moderator.
Yeah,
I don't know. The town administration was equally sort of surprised by this.
So should I call Joe Hale and ask him how he said?
That might not be a bad idea if you know
I've been
him.
working with him. We're bringing the Cape Cod Symphony here for next Christmas for Pops.
Great.
And I've been working on it for 8 years. So and Joe has taken the initiative, and we got a plan. So I'm happy to talk to Joe and see what he has in mind, if that's okay with the committee.
Please, I'd be thrilled to hear what from his side of things.
So you could send a little information email around, no response called for, and we'll know what you found out.
I, of course, will do that, my friend.
I think that sounds excellent.
That's known as bucking the pass.
That's right.
Well, whatever.
No. I'm the one who's raising a
Yeah.
fuss. So if you're fussing, do something.
There you go.
Good for you.
All right, so we sort of took other business out of order, but I'll post a meeting for Thursday, for those who want to attend. So we're all set. The next item is the review of the position papers relative to investigated topics and discussion. I believe we were supposed to talk about the audit committee and organizational structure.
Well, I had sent around to the members a sort of review of our audit committee charter and the membership, and a summary of audit committee organization structures from several other towns, including the town of Wellesley. Let's go through here. The others, Long Meadow, and there was another one. Let's see.
Mashpee?
Mashpee, good, thank you. And the reason to do this was that our committee right now has 3 members, the chairman of the board and the chairman of the finance committee, and 1 other member of the board of selectmen. And it always seemed to me that group they're all essentially what you might think of as close to the administration. Some people might think of them as insiders, and I just think it would be helpful. And one way to open up the audit committee's membership to include, and one way to do this would be to expand its membership by 2 people and have those both publicly appointed. They could be appointed by the selectmen, but they're not a member of other town committees. And hopefully they would have some professional background. And I think it's quite possible we can find people in the community who would be willing to serve in that capacity. They don't meet all that often, maybe 4 times a year at the most. So I think that would be just one recommendation I would have, that the committee consider that.
For this type of committee, would it be possible to have summer residents or seasonal residents? Only because I believe that, I'm certain that we would have enough people here with accounting and strong finance backgrounds who may be civically minded who are here in the summer.
I think
Just a thought. I don't know if there's anything
I think
appropriate
they're,
with that.
they wouldn't have to be accountants per se. As long as they have some professional organizational experience, they might have served on audit committees in their capacity at other companies,
Right.
which they would bring that experience with them. I have no objection to summer residents serving.
I was just curious.
But I don't, if our current, trying to remember, maybe some of you do, whether they're precluded at the moment or they're welcome,
We have at St. Paul's, our treasurer is a very experienced financial person. And Frank Robinson, who has just stepped down as treasurer, is an attorney and has been doing the finances of St. Paul's. Martin McCarroll is now the current one. And then we have a fellow named Phil Smith, who is a member of the vestry, but was a 6-month summer resident, but he's back and forth all the time for vestry meetings, monthly vestry meetings at St. Paul. And so in that context, someone like Phil Smith would be qualified as a, quote, summer person, but yet a regular here, and that might enhance what we're trying to do, is to show involvement. So I would keep that in mind.
I think those are good ideas, and I think that's one organization. If you expand that to, talk to the people who participate in 10 or 15 other organizations, I don't think we'll have difficulty, and I think there would be interest. I think this kind of expanding the committee can't hurt, at least is the way I look at it. So
Yeah.
And if anybody doesn't have this, I'd be happy to send it around again.
I have it, I just didn't bring it.
Yeah, no, I understand. The other thing the audit committee is charged with, as I recall specifically, is appointing the outside auditor. And one thing to think about, I'm not sure the committee should actually do the appointing or recommend an appointment to the Board of Selectmen, who's ultimately responsible for keeping the books and records of the organization through the town manager. So that's just one other thing to make clear in our own minds of what our audit committee is charged with and whether or not they should have that responsibility as a decision maker or as a recommending body. So.
So with this sort of change to the audit committee, would you recommend, or do you think we're going to be in a position to recommend a substance or a change to the charter, or would we be in a position to say, hey, we think this is a good idea to investigate further, and we may want to set up a committee or set up a study to actually study whether or not who an ideal audit committee would be?
Well, I think it's not all that complicated, John. So I think we, if we all think about it seriously and go through in our own minds some of the major issues as why an expansion of the committee could be a good idea. I'm not sure I would have a charter change if this was the only charter change that came out of the committee. But if we have more than one, I think I would recommend our recommendation would be to do it, assuming the members of our committee support the concept.
Understood.
I mean, I don't see why not. It's not, I don't think it's so much a matter of study as a matter of adding a little bit more independence to the audit review process that I don't see how it can be harmful. So,
Is the audit committee a charter item?
Yeah. The audit committee at one point, yes, it had an amendment, I think, to the charter
So it would,
5 years ago or 7, maybe it's more now, to clarify some of its responsibilities. That's when I was on the
Just
board.
couldn't add two people to it, like from the board or from the select board.
Probably not in a formal way. You probably
Okay,
need to
well, fine.
make that
So let's
change.
see how it goes. I
Yeah.
like the idea.
Yeah,
very
yeah,
much.
I'm supportive of it as well.
So.
Great. Thank you. You want to talk about organizational charts too?
Yeah, I agreed to follow. I mean, clearly you have our organization chart that was handed out, I believe, by the town manager, and that chart, it seemed to me, didn't reflect the way the town actually operates. And when you look at it, you would note, for example, that it talks about, I think it was public safety is a good example, and there isn't an overall head for the fire department, the police department, and so on. Rather, as I understand it, the fire chief and the police chief still report to the town manager. And the chart didn't reflect that directly. And I think it's helpful to have a chart that reflects the actual reporting relationships. And I think some of the things that, at least that I think need to be addressed, are the relationship between the town and the plus departments, and the nature of the contract between the NP and EDC and the town of Nantucket. It's unusual. I don't think there's any other town in the Commonwealth that has such a formal arrangement. And I've never found it to be one that, in my mind, serves the town well. I did find an organization chart for the town of Barnstable, which is kind of interesting in that it sort of takes, in terms of people who report to the town manager in Barnstable, even though they have a different form of government, they still have a hired professional.
A big chart.
They have a professional town manager who still reports to their town council. And they have the police, the public works, community services, and what they call regulatory services are the major sort of administrative overview activities that report to the town manager. Right. And I just found that a interesting way to put it. Our structure tends to, I think, take away the coordination and required planning between, it kind of separates them a little bit between land use and the Board of Selectmen. And to me, the land use policies of the town probably are almost more important and long-lasting in their impact on our community than, whether the budget goes through for the landfill this year. And I think once the select board kind of steps away from that a little bit, they're, I don't think, as active in their planning responsibilities as they ought to be. So I think the kind of chart that we see in Barnstable would make more sense for Nantucket. So that's one option. It's not easy, incidentally, to go online and find organization charts from other towns. They're just,
I'll bet they are.
They don't just pop up. So we may, actually, we could ask the town manager. Maybe, I know that she has communication with other town managers on kind of a, not on a regular basis, but could ask them for copies of their organization charts, and that might help give us some other ideas. There are some towns that have, as a matter of their bylaws, a requirement that the town managers or town administrators submit at least annually the organization chart to the Board of Selectmen, or Select Board as it may be called, for review and information purposes. And given my own experience on the board, I think that's a helpful requirement. If the town manager and the select board wanted to do that without putting in a bylaw, that's one thing. But if they are not doing it, I think the way the town is run is organizationally is important, and that might be helpful here as well. So, and I think I sent around some, when we first started months ago, John, one of the emails had excerpts, I'll call them, from several other town charters or bylaws reflecting their approach to how they informed their select board or board of selectmen on how the town was organized, and those could be helpful.
Yeah.
Let me just clarify a question.
Yeah.
Right now, Andrew Vorse does or does not report to Libby?
Well, you probably should ask him. I know that he has a contract, and his, as I understand it, his evaluation is performed by the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission, and they each are asked to fill out evaluation forms, and his contract is with the NP and EDC. That doesn't mean that under his contract he isn't required to perform the services for the town in an appropriate manner and under the direction of the town manager. Most people, whether they work for the town or the state government or private business, pay most attention to the person who pays them first. So that's why I think it's a subtle but important distinction, Curtis.
Well, when you look at Plus and all of the agencies under Plus, if they're accountable to Andrew, which they are in the organization chart, I believe, but through Andrew, does HDC or the building department have any accountability trickling down from Libby or the town manager to them?
Well, I think those organizations, the reporting relationship would go through this contract, and set the contract aside. Let's just say that I presume the town manager can give direction to the planning director as she feels necessary. But the staff people who support the HDC and the building inspectors and so forth report through the planning director. Not, and, just as someone who might be the facilities manager for the town reports through the head of the DPW manager to Libby. They're all indirect. Those spots are indirect.
That's always been my understanding as well, for what it's worth, about how that relationship works as far as Plus and town.
But no other town manager has the folks who serve as the staff for the Conservation Commission or the HDC. You may recall this was a discussion at some point about where the staff of the it's not staff of the HDC, staff that supports the HDC reports. Like 3 years ago, that was a topic that came up, and it's come up several times over the past 20 years. And I think it's clear that each of the staff positions that support our regulatory bodies, except for those that report through the planning director, report up through the town manager and not to the commissions. I would hope when they're reviewed that their reviewers would ask the commissions how they feel the person's performing. There's kind of a dotted line relationship, and I think that would be a normal, well-founded human resource policy arrangement, is to make sure such review or such input is available to the person responsible for supervising those positions.
Seems like good governance that way. Yeah.
So.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Rick? Okay. Let's see. Moving on, I believe, oddly enough, our next agenda item would be the meeting timeline for the winter and the spring. Without having Tucker and Linda here, I don't know how concrete we want to make it, but so we've met twice in January. Is that working well for people? I know we would have had more to discuss had we not been stymied by the weather on Thursday. But is twice a month?
I think we need twice a month to be up to a town meeting, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
Right.
we've got to get a report drafted,
Right.
sometime before town meeting.
So okay, so that's all well and good. That works. So the next item was going to be the discussion of the trip to Falmouth regarding the representative town meeting. So obviously that did not happen due to the foul weather on Thursday. However, Falmouth is almost on call, ready for us. So whenever we are ready to go back over there, they will make themselves available and ready.
To try to go next week sometime.
I think that works too. I believe it certainly works for me next week. I believe the gentleman, the town clerk, said that he was he couldn't do late next week. So like the 4th or the 5th or the 6th, somewhere in that ballpark would
Well, my dilemma is I have responsibilities at St. Paul's next week, Tuesday morning at Sherburne Commons, and then Wednesday morning I do the early service. I can get that covered.
Okay.
If one of those days is our day. And if asked, I would say Tuesday's an easier day for me to finesse because Wednesday is staff meeting as well as the service at the church, and it's helpful for me to do that.
Okay.
So Tuesday or Thursday would be my, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday would be my.
Okay. I don't think we can do, I don't think he can do Thursday, the gentleman from Falmouth, but I can certainly check to see if he has a preference on Monday or Tuesday.
Well, it depends what you guys can do. I still have, my car's going in the shop tomorrow.
Okay.
Get tuned up.
I like going in a tuned-up car.
So the other question is that, I'm going to plead my ignorance here. What is the boat schedule for the High Line? There's a 7:40 boat, and then there's a 10:30 boat?
7:40, 10:30, and wait a minute. The 9:05 comes over and goes back at 10:30. The 12 o'clock comes over and goes back around 1:30, and then the next one that goes back is at 4:30.
Right. So I assume it would make everyone's life easier if we took a 10:30 boat. I mean, I think we're going to be in Falmouth for about an hour.
Well, if we go at 10:30, we get over 11:30. By the time we get the car, it's 12. It's going to take 40 minutes to get down. It's almost 1 o'clock. And I don't know if you're going to eat lunch before or after. Frankly,
yeah, go ahead.
I'd go on the early boat.
Okay.
And I might even go over the night before and stay at my sister's, partly because the steamship 6:30 arrives just when the 7:40 Highline arrives, so to get a ride to the parking lot is a half-hour wait. Oh no, I can get a ride. I can grab a Uber. And I'm just trying to think logistically. But what I'd like to do is get down there, have our meeting, and have lunch.
Works for me. So
I'll eat lunch.
So we'll try.
I didn't want to go too late.
So we'll try to schedule something at like 10 then, like a 10 o'clock meeting.
No, wait a minute.
Or
if we get in
10:30 meeting.
We get there at 8:40.
We get in at 8:40. We get on the road at 9. It's an hour. Between 10 and 11. If they had to be at 11 because of their other work schedules, we could still do it.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm not pushing anyone. I'll go later if you want.
Yeah.
I always have a place to stay in Hyannis if it's the weather's bad.
Okay. Let me check on that.
All right.
But I think it would be nice to get this one.
Yeah. If it had to be Wednesday, I can arrange to get coverage at St. Paul's.
Okay.
But that's the more critical of the two days.
Okay.
I can't do Wednesday.
Oh, good. So do Tuesday.
So there is a 3:05 coming back,
Right.
just so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tuesday might be a little bit difficult, but I would prefer Monday if that.
Oh, I
That is the
love
day
Monday.
after Super Bowl though. So getting up very early that
Monday
Monday.
is
I feel a little tired.
sort of for church people a day off. This
Right.
is our down day.
All right. Well, let me touch base with him, see what he can do, what's
Right.
realistic on his end, and then we'll.
Okay.
we'll see what we can do for that day. Post the meeting and all that fun stuff. All right. So, any other business at this point? No? All right.
Do you want to schedule the next?
I would say let's schedule the next one. So date and time of next meeting. We could do it later that week, whether it be the 7th or the 8th, or we could do it on the 11th.
The 11th works.
We can do the 11th at 1 o'clock again. And
Is the 11th a Monday again?
it is, yeah.
Those are good days, I think.
Okay. All right. Why don't we plan on the 11th at 1 o'clock then? And I'll send out.
And that's making the assumption that we will have been to Falmouth.
We will have been to Falmouth, and we will have heard what the Dreamland has to say on Thursday evening.
I was just looking, if we're gonna meet twice that month, then 2 weeks later is
School vacation, isn't
school
it?
vacation.
Okay,
I
so
don't know if we wanna try to meet
Well,
like
and I will
around
be
the
out of town
21st.
from the 18th to the 25th anyway.
okay, well, I would say we should try to meet at the 11th. We can talk about the next meeting, but yeah, I would say try to avoid school vacation week, maybe.
And you're gone the week before school vacation.
I'm going from the 17th to the 25th.
Okay, and the 25th is school.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you can meet without me. Probably better if you do.
Okay. All right, then why don't we?
Are there other applicants? Just one other question.
Yes,
Do we
sir.
know if there are applicants to
There-
fill Richard's position?
There
or-
is one. Somebody
I
reached
haven't
out to me.
checked
A nice gentleman by the name of Tom Dixon has reached out to me.
Oh, Tom has?
Oh, really?
Tom has,
Oh,
and I
interesting.
said I'll buy you a cup of coffee or an iced tea, and I will gladly chat with you about this. And we just haven't had a chance to connect since. So, Tom, if you're listening again, I owe you a coffee. But he's the only person that I've heard.
Well, because he serves for Dillon, he'll know a fair amount about Falmouth, just for example.
Interesting.
And the vineyard.
Yeah.
He should understand each of those communities, so.
Maybe we can recruit somebody who wants to take notes.
Sounds
You're
like
so good.
Sounds like Mr.
How
Dixon to
can
me.
anyone beat you?
I know.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How does the vineyard has, how many towns? 4 or 5?
5, I think.
Fine.
So
Okay.
there's no analogy there of vineyard to us. I'm curious, island to island.
Not really. Probably, if you looked at Edgertown, I mean, it's big enough to have some substance. The other towns are pretty small,
Yeah.
so.
How will they run?
I think, I shouldn't comment. I think they're all town meetings, but, you
Open.
know, Curtis, I could be wrong.
That's always been my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, a collection of small towns.
That's exactly right.
All right.
All right. Well, if there's no other business, may I have a motion to adjourn at 1:38?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so Joe Hale is gonna hear from me.
Good. And Jason will hear from me as well. I will post the meeting just in case.
Yes.
Will you be there?
I'm not sure. Let's see if I get a hall pass for that one.
How is your partner? Is she recovering? You said you were on sick duty at one point.
Yes, she's back now. Richard is recovering nicely from his hip surgery.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I wasn't asking about him. I don't care about him.
No one cares
care about you.
No, she's doing much better. She was
Where do you have it done?
he had it on the Cape.
So did someone else who I'm aware of.
He had it done on the Cape. He was very interested in going to New England Baptist
Yeah.
because they just do that's all that they do. And whoever the doctor was who was going to do it, he was talking to his physical therapist. I don't think I want to go there because I see patients who went to that guy and they need a lot of work.
Ooh.
oh, interesting. Is there somebody else you'd recommend? He said, it's people on the Cape.
And that's very funny because this person who is well known in the community had his town last week there, and I was surprised. I thought you'd be going to Boston.
He said it was great, and the nice thing for him was that because he had the first one done in September,
Yeah.
they had a little, as he put it, they had a little trouble getting the pain cocktail right, those pain meds with the right
I
dosage.
start with bourbon usually.
But they,
Cocktail's the operative word.
yeah.
You bet.
they kept the notes from the first one, so this time around, they started him with the exact same combination,
Yeah, that's
and he
good.
said it's been much
Great.
better,
Good.
much easier, so.
Okay.
The Vineyard has select board for all their towns.
Okay, Danny, Joe, look out.
Oh, that's such a bummer. The Affordable Housing Trust is executive session. I thought it was, so they had a
What?
meeting, I got an email that Affordable Housing was meeting today, so I was gonna go and attend, but it's executive session.
Is that on now, or is that?
It's at 2.
Affordable Housing Trust,
Yeah.
probably the same subject it has. I've never wanted to mention the word, as is on the agenda for the board last Thursday.
Do we have to shut anything off?
I don't think so, we can't even get into that room, so I think we're good. At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, thank you, everyone.
Hey, John, how about a little, one more comment on our last discussion
Yeah.
about Holbrook Avenue.
Yeah.